Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing The Duelist, directed by Ridley Scott, Videodrome by David Cronenberg, Hook by Steven Spielberg, newly released Reminiscence by Lisa Joy, and Malignant, directed by James Wan. So stay tuned and enjoy the show. Mr. Vincent Daly, how we doing, buddy?
How's it going, Tom?
It's going well. How's your week of movies, man?
Week of movies was good. I had a lot of enjoyment, finally getting some spooky films in, and obviously anticipation of October coming up.
Sure.
So I'm happy to take a look at some of the newer releases, setting up some older type of horror films that I always want to check out, so this is definitely a dip into that, but also some very good films, one of which I'm very excited to talk about, which I think we'll probably lead off with.
Absolutely. You're talking about The Duelist.
I am talking about The Duelist.
All right. 1977, Ridley Scott.
We can go ahead and intro this in a way, folks, that understand that this is something that's probably not on your radar if you are a Ridley Scott fan. Ridley Scott, of course, director of the Alien franchise, Blade Runner, obviously most recently did a production, his unit did production for Raised by Wolves for HBO. So a lot of sci-fi of what you would come across with Ridley Scott. This is a period piece, however, in Napoleonic times, which is awesome. And I had honestly, going into it, no idea Ridley Scott directed it, which was such a...
Was the movie on your radar at all?
Not really. It was something that I wanted to watch because Harvey Keitel is in it. I always want to kind of check him out as far as earlier roles.
Yeah, he's cool.
Absolutely. And it is a cool movie as far as being it being structured in a relationship of two soldiers with having this dual streak. Little did I know this was not only a Ridley Scott film, this was Ridley Scott's first film as well.
Oh, really? So, yeah, it was 77. When was Alien?
I want to say 79
or something like that?
Yeah, maybe something like that. I always thought it was earlier, now come to think of it.
I kind of thought that too. I will check that though.
But when it comes to this film, the reason why I preface it in that way is because I think despite it maybe not being the main line or the main success or skill set that Ridley Scott has and lends his creative talent to as far as the theme of science fiction, really absolutely worth your time. There is a huge draw in this film of how it's structured. The plot jumps across many years, and it really does service the film in two ways. The narrative being fueled by these soldiers that are interested in each other for their dueling prowess. On top of that, we have in the background of this, these time jumps being focused on the progression of the Napoleonic era. So when I call this film a period piece, you probably come to mind, you think of maybe some Oscar bait, kind of Victorian, classical type of dialogue. There is some of that here, but it's a period piece in the best way because it's structured around action in the entire film.
Right.
But there is absolutely some enjoyment to tracking the years that progress in the film and tying them into the Napoleonic era and what was going on at the time. So I think there is some enjoyment for some history buffs and where it ties into how these characters are evolving with the events around you. I think there is a balancing act that the film and the plot, or rather the script of the screenplay, it creates a a wonderful dance because we have developments in the characters from the events we see on screen. But then there are background elements never really explained fully, but you can feel them in the progression of the characters and how they're being structured and what they're being introduced to as far as new characters, set pieces, and everything like that. Really enjoyable for that reason. I think it does that balancing act of a period piece for that reason.
Wow, very cool. Yeah. This wasn't on my radar. I didn't even know about it.
I don't think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
This was also a film that I believe was from an original novel. Not uncommon for a director's first foray into a feature film to kind of be based off of based off of something written. I think for the acting though, both leads, Keith Carradine and Harvey Keitel, they are phenomenal.
They carry really well.
Absolutely, and Keith Carradine. Not exactly someone as an actor that I really know that much about. This is probably the first major film that I've seen him in. So not someone that I know and certainly don't know his filmography from, but really enjoyable and the kind of duplicity. It's honestly odd to use that type of word for something so old-fashioned, but there is a duplicity between the two characters. There's a draw that you're always waiting for to see when are these two characters going to be on screen with each other. This feud.
So I was just going to ask you, how do they share a lot of screen time together, or do they hold down the fort separately in their own scenes well?
Yes, they hold down the fort definitely separately. Keitel actually takes a back seat. Keith is really the main lead here in how it's structured, in how the scenes are put, and then they cross each other, basically.
Okay, and them together on screen is...
fantastic.
The best part. Okay, cool.
Absolutely. Mostly because more often than not, that is when combat sequences or action sequences are taking place. I think that's another great point to why this is a period piece that I would highly, highly recommend, because it's not going to bore you to tears. Not only are you paying attention to maybe some historical appreciation, not only are you paying attention to a very good character drama that is well written, the action is fantastic.
Wow,
it's high stakes, and you kind of can't wait until the next encounter in this type of film, which honestly is a blessing, because I think if there is going to be a barrier to how I recommend a period piece, is it really going to be worth the huge time investment that maybe comes with a longer run time on a film, and even if it may be falling to some criticism like being Oscar bait or something
right.
But sets, costumes, props, all great. The star of the show absolutely is the on-location shoots. The on-location...
For his first film, too. How great. This is great to hear.
Absolutely. And that's why it's a point that I wrote down. The on-location shots are not only beautifully shot cinematography-wise, being the backdrop for some very exciting sequences, but they are gorgeous, they are beautiful, and really let you capture the feel. Obviously, none of us know what it would be like to live in the Napoleonic era, but it really does create a wonderful feel that we are transported into an older world, older fashion, and that goes a long way to the storytelling of it, because we don't know what it's like to be driven by honor or be driven by this kind of duelist code, and that is the heart of the film, the main through line. So it's important for us to be transported in that way. The star of the show for that transportation is, again, these location shoots. But bottom line, it is...
Where is it taking place?
All over Europe.
Okay, all over, yeah.
Yeah, some of it is in France, of course.
Of course, yeah.
Some of it is progressing further and further through the Napoleonic campaign as well, so that you get some action in Germany, you get some action in Poland, I believe. It's good stuff.
Yeah,
it's
okay.
Good. And I was surprised too, especially with how old of a film this is.
Yeah.
I was expecting to be maybe a little bit bored. It was an awesome time.
Maybe a little cheesy or something like that in some scenes. What made you find this? Were you looking up Ridley Scott films, or were you just looking up like kind of unknown greats films?
This was something that was kind of on a list that I wanted to take a look at. Just interesting films written off of books or having some sort of source material. I found Harvey Keitel. That probably landed it on me writing it down. And then from there, again, it was me just chipping away at a list and finding out almost as I was starting it up that it was directed by Ridley Scott, and again, no
That's a nice
less
surprise.
first film, which is insane.
Yeah, Alien was 79. Yeah,
And he goes on to Alien right after this.
two totally different films.
Two entirely different films. It was also for me a wonderful
period piece to a future period piece.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Like that's unbelievable.
Exactly. For me, a little bit of an insight, and of course I will eventually dedicate probably a whole episode to this, folks, but the first Alien is one of my favorite films of all time. So to watch something by Ridley Scott, technically the only one before Alien, and try to also spot some of his very early film craft,
Sure, yeah.
It was so enjoyable for me as well. And if you appreciate Ridley Scott, I think that, again, another feather in the cap of this movie.
So while you were watching it, were you picking up on little things that is pure Ridley Scott? Like, because you just watching his movies over the years and really liking his earlier stuff, did you watch this and be like, oh, that's totally Ridley Scott? Like that?
I don't know if I could pick that out. I would probably definitely have to give Duellists another watch, just because.
And really look for it. Okay,
exactly. I think that's definitely an interesting project, and maybe that's when we return to Alien or just Ridley Scott as a director theme in general. That would be something I would absolutely look to.
Right.
I think bottom line, it really comes down to it. It's everything you want out of a period piece, and I can't stress enough, not in any sort of boring way. I really had a wonderful time with this film and recommend it highly for that reason.
Yeah, it's a quick film. It's at an hour and 40 minutes, too.
Absolutely. You're not putting a ring on it. And when I say that there is a spine, there is a backbone of action driving maybe even the slower parts, I think everyone can get invested into that as an audience member. And there's many different extra add-ons from the historical element, from this being Ridley Scott's first film, that is going to create more of an attractive entry to watching a film like this out of nowhere. A film from 77 out of nowhere. But we are going to go ahead and give The Duellists an 83.
Wow.
Absolutely. I was happy too.
Oh my God.
I've been at ends with Ridley Scott for obviously his newer films and newer productions.
Little tough.
A little tough, absolutely.
This is shocked. And it's, I don't know if people picked up, we mentioned it before. I don't know the movies you're reviewing until we sit down here.
Right.
I had no idea. I didn't even know this movie existed. And 83, and again, to remind folks, 83 is like under must-watch films. When you crack that 80s, these are movies that everyone should set aside and see.
Absolutely.
Or take time to see.
And I think this one plainly sits in a spot that, I don't know many movies about kind of Napoleon's age, or Napoleonic era, but this is absolutely something that kind of fits in that slot and checks a box for sure.
Wow, what a nice surprise.
Mm-hmm. I was happy to lead off with it. We do this chronologically, of course, in how to introduce it, so we have the newer movies last. And I was happy to lead off with this one because I think the past couple episodes as well.
You didn't even tip me off before the mics came on. You weren't like, oh, we got a big one coming up. Nothing.
Right.
This was a big boy alert.
Absolutely.
Oh, fantastic.
Absolutely.
I'm going to give this a watch as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
We're in it. We've done, we're still in some of our first episodes, but this is still, I think this is the second 80 we ever got on the list.
I think so, at least as far as, yeah. But
The Duelist at 83%. Okay. Everybody give it a watch. Shall we keep it going?
Absolutely.
Let's see. I guess nowhere to go but down. Maybe not, but we'll see. Right. So we're moving on to 1983, Videodrome.
Videodrome. So this is what I was referring to as some of the horror films we're dipping into. David Cronenberg behind the lens on this one. David Cronenberg is a madman. He is such a crazy set designer, prop designer, of course, for our folks at home that may not know all of Cronenberg's work. This is The Fly. This is Scanners. Videodrome is
a weird dude.
Yeah. A weird dude. Also has done less horror films in the 2000s. He did Eastern Promises and has kind of not a mini trilogy, but almost an unofficial trilogy of
movies.
Did
Eastern Promises?
Yeah, I know. Which is an oddball, especially, not to my knowledge. I don't think Eastern Promise has any practical effects, like as far as like a monster or, even like gore and whatnot.
Right.
So, Videodrome is a movie plainly in that madness that you associate with movies like The fly, from the practical effects to the premise to how the character and the world is created. It is engaging, intoxicating, and also a little disgusting for that reason, but something that I think falls into definitely above average watch for how novel and how new, even from a film from '83. I could not predict this film at all of where it was going, and
So this was the first watch. You didn't see this 5 years ago or anything
no,
like that?
no, yeah. And recently we watched Scanners, which was one of his films. That, again, really surprised me, really shocked me as far as where the movie was going and just how the practical effects were introduced. I think that's the unsettling element of these practical effects is the best part about it. Not only do they hold up 100%.
Cool. I mean, that's awesome.
They're shocking in a way that CGI probably could never be. And it's shocking, not because it looks the realest, because it looks alien, because it looks disturbing if you came across it. You know, you kind of put yourselves in the shoes of the characters.
So it's shocking and unpredictable in a really quite a good way.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think that's a serious positive mark for horror, especially horror,
Yeah,
where it's
yeah.
so formulaic. And we'll get to, obviously, talking about a modern horror in this episode,
that's true.
too.
You know what to expect from a lot of modern day horrors, and you can see, 20 minutes in the movie, you kind of can make up how the rest is going to go a little bit.
Absolutely.
For the bulk of them. So it's
Yeah.
nice to have that shock and all, kind of.
Yeah. I think where we dip, and especially talking about the character shoes, James Woods, Hades. That's always what I remember him as for, growing up as a 90s kid. He plays a downright vile character dealing in a television production around snuff, around porn, around violent content. And there is a unsettling crafting around the world that the science fiction in this film is not in anything beyond the world being kind of dystopian. It is our world, but it's, it takes place in places like Pittsburgh and Seattle and all this stuff. But it is a different world where people are vile. They're more connected to their urges. It is a dark, almost dystopian type of society, but very close and run by TV. Run by the television, and that's where kind of this Videodrome title comes from. There is for that reason, a mastercraft in the world crafting, because you're introduced to very abstract concepts in the film. For instance, no spoilers, but there is a kind of a missionary group that specializes in TV therapy.
Okay.
And you're looking at this, and it's like, it's in a church. It's almost like a soup kitchen for TV. And you're looking at this, and you're like, what's going on? But slowly and slowly, you pick up a literacy about the world that Cronenberg is crafting throughout the movie. And I got to give serious props to that, because nothing is really set explanation. Nonetheless, I came out of the film understanding exactly the type of horror universe that Videodrome creates in its film. It's a really interesting time, and I think what holds the film back here, and much how I said James Woods plays a downright vile character, every character in this is unredeemable. This is a horror film that there is almost no protagonist in its structure, because everyone is either a piece of shit and getting what's coming to them, or part of the madness that unfolds in the film.
So you're kind of wishing there was a character. Yeah, you kind of wish there was at least a gray character, some good to him, and things like that. So this is just all
bad,
downright rotten people.
Yeah, and maybe that's the old-fashioned way that you would create a horror film, that if you're going to see violence on screen, it best happen to people that have it coming to them.
Right.
It makes it a little bit difficult to recommend this film for a broad audience, though, because I would almost give a trigger warning to some of the stuff on the film that James Woods deals with as a character. It's intense. And almost from the first 15 minutes, you're saying, wow, this character is an absolute piece of human garbage.
So is it almost like, do you almost wish while watching it, you wish you had somewhat of a decent guy to be rooting for? for?
Maybe.
Because are you rooting for James Woods at any point in the film?
I think the film naturally progresses towards the thing that he's getting more and more involved in the madness that unfolds, and as any kind of fight or flight response, this character is going to try to overcome that. I don't say I was ever really particularly rooting for him for that reason.
All right.
Maybe creates a weird dynamic among the film. Also, again, specific to the ratings for what we're talking about here as a viewer guide, as something that I can recommend to people. A very interesting film. If you're involved in any sort of practical effects or appreciation of practical effects, I would say almost required watching. In any other circumstance, and especially among horror circumstances, something that falls much more middle of the road for me because it's a tough watch in a lot of instances. It's very graphic, and that's even the practical effects aside. That's before we get into the crazy stuff, too.
Okay.
So the subject matter is what is tough here. Soundtrack, a bit John Carpenter-ish, very synthy, very groovy. Works in some areas where it's trippy. It's also a little bit hit or miss for that reason because it sounds a bit amateurish, if I'm being honest.
Oh, interesting.
One thing with the practical effects, which I would be remiss to say if we weren't, if I didn't mention for a David Cronenberg film, the effects are nowhere near as gross as The Fly, which is always the boundary for me.
Okay.
It's something that I think it hits a really nice balancing act, both for the type of gore, the type of crazy imagery that he's creating with his practical effects team. And it hits a really nice balancing act that you don't want to look away, where I feel with later things like The Fly, there's almost a gross out factor that you kind of want to look away. So that's a very good positive note for Videodrome.
Wow, okay, yeah. That's a good distinction, I think.
Yeah, because you could hear Cronenberg and only know The Fly and say, oh, those are really gross movies. I think this is a balancing act in between.
And just for more distinction, would you characterize this as watch anytime during the year, or just it being a bit of a horror kind of weird thing? Does it fit in the whole spooky Halloween-y type thing?
It's definitely not ghouls and goblins. And it definitely is sci-fi horror, plainly, just because of how out there it is. But I think I'd rather take that any day over a vampire movie.
Like, do you think Cronenberg always has his own genre of weird horror?
That's a good point, honestly.
It's creepy.
Yeah.
And kind of makes you feel gross.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of gross out horror, sci-fi.
Gross horror, sci-fi.
Yeah, maddening worlds. Yeah, it's out there for sure. I don't think I can talk too much more about it without really going into specifics. I think bottom line here, if you are an appreciator of practical effects, it's a must-watch. I think for that reason, though, or rather the reasons of, unlike most movies, there is almost no redeeming factors for characters and the subject matter of these characters. In a word, Videodrome is polarizing, and I think is difficult to rate for a general thing. So that's why I want to kind of give that caveat. I think beyond that, though, we're going to go ahead and give Videodrome a 69.
A 69 is still pretty good. Polarizing, that's good. And it's with 69, do you think that's almost slicing in the middle a little bit? Kind of a love or hate. People are going to watch it. Maybe some people would love it for the artistic style, and maybe in their heads would oh my gosh, this is fantastic. Mm-hmm. And then some people would watch it and be like, this should be like a 30.
Yeah.
Because maybe they're just repulsed by it.
Yeah,
right?
You hit the nail on the head. I think, you show this to your mom or something like that. she's gonna, it's giving you an exorcist. It is, for that reason, it really could land a large part on the spectrum. I think I am an appreciator of practical effects. I think that's why it is a little bit higher on that because I really do think it's amazing what he does on screen, and it's amazing what he does with his worlds too.
That's awesome. David Cronenberg. There's somebody to just keep on paying attention to. I need to go back through and kind of his repertoire and just kind of go through some of his films. 69 for Videodrome, though. Very nice. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go on a much, much lighter, happier, softer note in a weird way.
Yeah, we go from a high-ranking film, a polarizing film. Let's talk about something.
There's elements of darkness in this a little bit, but hey, let's do Hook with Robin Williams.
That's amazing.
And Dustin Hoffman. Fantastic.
The king Tom of transitions.
Yeah.
Hook. Steven Spielberg behind the camera on this. Honestly, I think I was recommended this by a friend when I said I have never seen it. Obviously, with this podcast now and getting into full swing, I'm open to watch anything, and let that be a bridge as well. If we have recommendations from the audience,
absolutely.
Ideas
for specials, anything like that.
I'm really open to it because even if I've seen it, I like returning to things with a critical outlook. Especially if I've seen it, I can really just focus on what my criticism is.
Yeah,
you know.
And even if you've seen something, and I don't know if people are picking up, when you could see a movie 4 times before, but if you're doing it specifically to get it on the ratings, to get it on the site for the podcast, you rewatch them fresh, take notes and everything like that.
Absolutely.
As far as Hook's is concerned, like you said earlier, we're kind of like we grew up in the 90s. That's like early childhood was 90s. And like everybody our age loved this movie. Even a little bit older, even some like younger Gen X folks really love Hook. It escaped by kind of both of us.
Yeah,
surprisingly,
that's why there was almost like the audacity type of reaction from my friend that was recommending this to me. So it was like, you haven't seen Hook, so that was kind of the position we were in. I would say the best and the best credit I can give Hook is that it is a story that is obviously expanding on the mythos of Peter Pan. It is a sequel in a lot of senses to what that Peter Pan legend is, or the Peter Pan story is. The greatest part about it is you don't really need to be a Peter Pan fan to appreciate a lot of what is done here, and a lot of what is done creatively with the story, folks. It's really a fun time to see how they change and not evolve, but how they riff almost on what are going to be established tropes of Peter Pan, what is honestly going to be general knowledge of a very old story and a very old fairy tale for a general audience, and then as well add in your Easter eggs, add in your callbacks for the hardcore fans to say, oh my God, that's this, or oh my God, that's that. And I think that's a really nice balancing act that probably would never be done today and in the future. They would just get way too overwhelmed with wanting to put Easter eggs with the hardcore fans or make that the entire film.
Right, of course.
So I applaud Steven Spielberg for his balancing act here of making a movie that can stand apart on its own, aside from source material, and definitely regardless if you're a fan or not, which I think is a big check plus.
Yeah,
for me.
Definitely. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Robin Williams, I love Robin Williams. It's a bit of a mad performance here, more so because the role of the character is forced into this. There is a lot of the movie that he has to overcome and kind of find himself again, which is obviously part of the story. Probably it's why the later half of the film is so good, because we're finally in full swing of things. I would say for that reason, first half, and specifically to Robin's performance, it's just maybe not the most enjoyable, and certainly not the Robin Williams that we want to see in a major way.
So do you think but what you're kind of saying is it might not be because of Robin's performance, it really just might be because of what the character is.
Yes,
it's what he has to work with.
Exactly.
Okay.
He's doing a good job acting, but the character is obviously, for the story reasons, going to be more toned back and not the full-blown Robin Williams that I would personally want to see on screen.
Right, that we get 2 years in Mrs. Doubtfire or something like that.
Right. And maybe it doesn't have to be jokes all the time. Of course, I mean, some of my favorite Robin Williams roles are his dramatic roles.
Yeah, his much more serious stuff.
But it just feels like he's a little bit shackled here, and it makes a little bit slower start for that reason. This is a very, very 90s movie. It is.
Okay.
It is. It bleeds.
And it's early. It's 91.
I know. That's why I was surprised.
It's like, so, yeah.
It was a trendsetter then, you know?
That's exactly what it was.
Both in the casts, in the sets, in the skateboards. It is 90 through and through.
Okay.
The reason why I bring this up is that, again, for the kind of watching guide of this, there is a massive cast of kids and kid actors in this.
Yeah, big time.
Some are really big hits. I would say most are misses to whatever.
Yeah, it's tough to get. I mean, kid acting is just tough.
It is tough.
It's just really tough.
It's a stickler for me specifically because kid acting really takes me out of it. And
if If you don't got chops, kid, you don't got. I mean, bad acting.
Off the street.
Bad acting takes you out of a movie,
Right,
no matter what, no matter what age.
Exactly. And some stuff is obviously just played for like, oh, isn't that adorable? And at the end of the day, this is a kids movie.
It's true. Kids aren't going to be sitting there. Although I will make one thing is it's really, I found that kids don't actually always love watching kids on screen. Kids want to be adults.
Yes.
So kids love performance of adults and everything like that. It's just it's one thing I've been noticing and picking up more. And we've been doing movie stuff lately, so I've just even for more what I've been looking up and reading, and it's interesting.
Absolutely.
But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's just something important to note, because for me, it was something that I was looking at, and more often than not saying, I wish this wasn't as many kids. But don't get me wrong, it's Peter Pan. It's Neverland. You don't grow up there, so you kind of have to be a kid there. So I understand that, take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. I think it's more so something to note for the palatability of, if you like kid actors, if that's something that is that is going to be a barrier to your enjoyment in watching, something to.
Well, talk about it's either almost like when you have a great kid actors, you think of like people love the Goonies, people love is it Stand By Me,
Yep.
And even like Stranger Things, which is newer. When you get good kid acting, it's almost just like you like it twice as much, because it's just like, look how good these kids are acting. Oh my god! But as soon as they aren't that great,
yep.
Totally.
It's a miss there, for sure.
One thing I always did remember from this movie, though, is how I was always surprised it was Dustin Hoffman.
Right.
Because he looks great. He's like,
he looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
He looks phenomenal. And him playing Hook is so over the top. He's having such a fun time with it too.
Right.
I really enjoyed him on the screen, and I wish I would have seen that similar type of enjoyment and energy through Robin in the entire film.
Right.
But yeah, Dustin is absolutely a standout as Hook, which is fantastic. And there's some really good callbacks in that as well. If you are, let me say it on the other end of the coin, if you are a fan of Peter Pan, if Peter Pan is one of your favorite kind of children's stories or children's fairy tales, then I would say this is a phenomenal film, because when the film does lean into those more Easter eggy kind of deep cut moments, they're there in a very significant way, in a very creative way. Again, that's where I think the biggest highlight for this is how this film is expanding on a story, a mythos that we all know, and how it does that creatively with time jumps and progression in the world, which is awesome to see. I think when it comes down to it, bottom line, not a fan, still a good time beyond being a kid-oriented film, and I think for that reason as well, it's something that if you have a baseline interest, or even not, just to see some of the performances and some of the creative set work here, it is absolutely something that you should make some time for. We're going to go ahead and give Hook a 72.
72, very good.
Yes. I'm not going to tear it apart.
Everybody,
kids films.
It's kids films. Just real quick, Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell. Good,
good, not annoying. Some adult themes with that, but I
she
think
plays the part she needs.
Exactly.
She needs to be okay.
Exactly.
72 though overall. That's a pretty damn good score. Wonderful. All right, so those are our three kind of past movies there. We're going to about to step into our now playing films. First, we want to take our moment here, go to our producer segment. We want to remind everybody this is a podcast and website going off the value for value model. You're finding value in what we're providing in the scores and everything we have on the website. Are you listening through the podcast? Are you just enjoying it? We're trying to stay away from corporate sponsors. We want to say what we want to say. We don't want to just shill products we don't give a damn about. And we're asking for you to, show your value in a monetary way. So if you could go to thedailyratings.com, you can go to the donations tab and through PayPal give whatever amount of value that you feel you received from us. I mean, a few bucks and everything like that, or whatever. Go on a payment plan. Do you think we're trying to grow it into something big, and it takes a decent amount of time, a little bit of money,
and it makes a difference with us as well. It makes a difference in the participation,
exactly,
that we have with you.
And write a note into us. You can email us and always write us in, but if you want your note read on air, just donate something, because we're going to read your notes that you send in along with your donations as well. If you want to be anonymous, just say you want to be anonymous as well. We won't say your name. And otherwise, we're trying to kind of create a little community, little tribe here. And we just hope you enjoy our content. We're asking for just a little contribute back to us. We greatly appreciate it. It's the value for value model, dailyratings.com, donations tab. Let's keep this going here. Let's go to the now playing films, Vin.
Okay.
And we're going to start with Reminiscence.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, let's leave the other one for the last. We have Reminiscence being the first directorial debut of Lisa Joy. Lisa Joy comes from Westworld talent, as far as I can tell, but this is the first feature-length film that she is directing. This one is an odd one, not in the sense that it is going to be a hidden gem in any kind of way. It's an odd one because there is a huge amount of love and care put into the design of the film, but really, unfortunately, was a terribly mediocre experience.
Is that right?
Yeah, and believe me, I can get behind science fiction films almost in any variety as long as they're doing something creative in the design area or in the concept area. And this definitely does check that box. Odd sci-fi, it is incorporating kind of a dystopian future that has environmentally dying world that kind of fuels a love of nostalgia, and I mean they have technology as futuristic as these dystopian memory machines. However, it's all wrapped up in like a 50s, 40s nostalgia where people are wearing suit and ties and fedoras, and there's old school microphones, and there's not really any cell phones in the movie. It's an odd mix. I bring this up.
So it felt like that you were in the 50s, but you weren't in the 50s?
No, it was definitely meant to be in the future, but the stylings of the future is kind of 40s, 50s oriented. It's very noir.
Interesting.
That is kind of in the genre here. I think if anything's driving that type of style, that it's sci-fi wrapped up in kind of a detective noir, is that it feels like a cyberpunk detective noir. We have Hugh Jackman, our main character, being right out of really any kind of noir tale, obsessed with some sort of femme fatale type of female. There is a draw there that he becomes obsessed, and it's on paper, I would say that this film would be something that I would love. But I can't tell you that the devil is... I can't stress enough that the devil is in the details, that the execution of the film is just so mediocre, middle of the road. And it's such a shame because the world is so creative. Again, this dystopian... Even some of my difficulty in describing it, the type of dystopian future and the type of science fiction in this film is very cool. The concepts that are introduced are used very well creatively as action points and drivers in the script as well. So again, a good use of technology being incorporated into the character work and the screenplay. But it feels like it's trying to do so many things. It feels like it's trying to be Blade Runner, but it's not. And then it also tries to feel like it's being like these old noir films, but it's also not. It's almost like an imposter type of film that it has all this care put into the world, but can't land any of the jumps.
Yeah, hearing that imposter film was maybe a good way to describe it. Mm-hmm. Did you see the trailer for it?
Yes.
I didn't know what to think of the trailer.
Right.
It didn't look great.
Makes it seem like an action, more of an action.
I got what you. I could understand how you would say, "Oh, this is going for a Blade Runner kind of feel." Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's a shame. Does it fail because also like how was the acting? Was the writing? Was everything just not up to par?
It just feels so meandering. It feels just
it didn't know what it really wanted to be.
Yeah, and maybe the assumption with Lisa Joy directing this, I don't know who has the writing credit on it, but maybe the assumption is that the visual design.
She wrote it too.
Oh, she wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Maybe the assumption is that the visual design, a la the new Blade Runner with Denis Villeneuve, would drive the interest, so we can have slower pacing in the film, and you're kind of enraptured in what visually is being presented for you. But that elegance is just not there, and that elegance is definitely removed by a very blockbuster narration by Hugh Jackman throughout the film. And it kind of just muddles into this like middle-of-the-road action film and honestly ruins all this setup, all this creative technology and thought put into the world and world crafting by Lisa Joy. You definitely see maybe even some of the roots from Westworld and how it's a combination of future and old.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah.
For that reason. And it's cool. It really is cool. I'll even give credit to not, creating a story that's, in the future, doesn't have cell phones in it. There's definitely conscious decisions in this film, but it's just
As you
so
said,
mediocre.
It wasn't executed right in like every department.
Absolutely. As far as, a lot of care being put into what is done with the technology, these characters, this acting. I mean, Hugh Jackman is almost doing a bad impression of his character in Prisoners. It's
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Hugh Jackman's great. I mean, I love Hugh Jackman. You like Hugh Jackman too.
Absolutely.
So he wasn't given maybe he wasn't given the writing or the direction. I mean,
Also, the sets in this film, while again very creative, I really do wonder into the production of this because we're in very tight sets, single room stuff. Is this a victim of a COVID type of production style? Maybe do we have separate actors in rooms? So maybe that translates to some of the odd dynamic or the odd performances and relationships.
Something was just off about it, huh?
Yeah. I think if I had to boil it down into one area, and certainly for the bottom line in regards to the rating, part of the problem is that the first half of the movie is just way too slow. And that relates to what I was saying, that I think some of the assumption there is that the audience is going to be enveloped in this cool world and content to just watch the cool world play out. And that's the first half of the film. Then by the second half, we have the plot really stepping in and amping up its intensity. And by that time, it just feels like nothing has weight, nothing has substance. Everything falls together so quickly, and I think for a detective-style noir story, that again is a negative mark because it just feels too easy. Nothing is earned.
Okay.
And it's just a shame because more than it being an overwhelmingly negative film, I see the potential in this film and watch it flow.
If you change director, more time and maybe a bigger budget, it would be unbelievable. Is this almost like director error almost?
I don't know.
Not to be too harsh, it's your first film. But.
It would be tough to say that because undoubtedly, especially with a Westworld credit, I think the world was something that was maybe conceptualized by Lisa Joy.
Okay, right.
And that is a plus to it. But ultimately, it's just middle of the road.
What could have been.
Exactly.
Okay.
Lost potential is resulting in this kind of tone, folks, of how I'm talking about it. I mean, believe me, if it was something dog shit, I'd have a lot more fun and energy in discussing why it's bad. But it's something that I see a lot of potential in, and almost none of it is acted upon. And it's a unique world wrapped in a very basic action plot story. So, but bottom line, we are going to go ahead and give Reminiscence a 57.
57. Maybe even a little bit better than I thought. Yeah. Wow, okay. 57. Yeah.
Something you'll catch on an FX.
Yeah, have on in the background or
Yeah,
whatever.
For sure.
Okay.
And you'll say, oh, that's cool. Maybe I'll watch this someday.
And, it's not very much talked about. It hasn't been, blowing up the reviewers or anything
it got out of theaters real quick. This was an HBO Max
it was
watch.
A bit of a flop. Yeah. So I think 57, total middle of the road.
Yeah,
right there. And
absolutely.
It's just the way you're acting, just watching you.
My body language.
It looks like a 50. This is a typical 50 film.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, let's see if we turn. That was Reminiscence, folks, at 57. Let's see if we can turn it around here with Malignant.
Okay, Malignant.
Yeah.
A doozy. So not that it affects anything with my rating, but definitely some of the draw. I mean, I was planning on watching this regardless because it was something that was easy to watch for it being on HBO Max streaming. James Wan is the director here. I will be completely honest, honest, folks, I have not seen a majority of what James Wan has done in primarily the Conjuring series and Annabelle and The Nun. The Nun was the closest one I maybe came to watch, just because the visual design I felt was really interesting, but I have not really cracked into that series whatsoever. So possibly that's fuel for October. We'll see. There's a lot of those films. So, but I bring it up because this film online is being reported that James Wan is trying to specifically break the mold. And boy, did he break the mold, because there is talk that this film is absolute dog shit movie. And then we have a lot of voices claiming it is a campy masterpiece. It's self-aware, you just didn't understand it. I hope at the end of this to help you navigate that as an audience, because nothing is worse than hearing buzz about a film and then getting kind of bit by it and wasting time.
Once again, I mean, this is, would you say, very much a polarizing film, just as we had with Videodrome.
Yeah, definitely different ways, but yeah, polarizing as far as audience reaction. 100%. 100%. This film is, if the pitch for James Wan's fans is that he's breaking away from a formula set in the Conjuring universe, then absolutely he succeeds on that. This is a predictable film up until the 2/3 mark, and then goes a little bit batshit. No spoilers or anything.
In a good way, or
I would say
that's the polarizing part.
Yeah, that really is the polarizing part. I think what it comes down to is that what this film is a callback to 2000s horror. Scream, The Ring, The Grudge. It's trying to create a very singular killer vibe that is the type of horror. And for me, I never found those films scary. I think it's important to note that this film I do not think is scary.
Really?
Yeah, it is not something that is above jump scares. It is not above kind of a little bit of gross out horror with the brutality of the film, but would I call it scary? No, and I think that's a fail.
And it's trying to be a horror first. It's not trying to be some crime or suspense mystery with a touch of horror. Like, it's meant to be. As far as first genre listed, would be horror.
I think so, because even if it is on the masterpiece side that is intentionally going after a parody or campiness of these films, it still fails at the core of what it's about. That it's not a scary movie. I don't think it's scary at all.
Wow. So really let down.
Absolutely, on that front, and I think that's important to note, because I mean, we're talking about a brand new horror film. Again, that's the core tenet, that's the keystone here. So, but where it comes into play is that there's a balancing act that basically the film is kind of a setup into a very shocking last third of the film. And obviously no spoilers or anything like that, but part of the reason why people are calling this a parody or some sort of, masterpiece that knows what it is, knows what the genre is. Camp, of course, being intentionally goofy, but because it's going for a style, a hyper style. The question is, does it make that balancing act? I think the acting is atrocious. The writing is worse. It really depends. It's in the eyes of the beholder, though, because if you take a look at that acting and you say, hey, is this supposed to be bad on purpose in service of the conclusion? I don't know. Maybe that's a way to see it. I think it doesn't do that balancing act. I don't think the payoff is worth it in any regard to, again, sacrifice scares, to sacrifice intrigue into the world.
But you're saying there's a chance that the poor acting could almost be part of it? Intentionally done?
Yes. I think the viewpoint on this film is that James Wan is trying to, for the fans of this film, James Wan is trying to create a very tongue-in-cheek, almost satire parody of Scream's The Ring, those type of films, and then hit you with a kind of a very different style of film.
It's dancing on the knife's edge.
Exactly.
Very difficult to get right.
Films that and you hit the nail on the head. In the horror genre, what comes to mind immediately is Cabin in the Woods. Cabin in the Woods was this meta horror film that horror films were parodied within the horror and referenced even within the movie. And in the same way, I think that is going to be hit or miss for a lot of audiences. If you understand what it is and the intention of it, does it still succeed on its own? Is that parody worth it, and can it stand apart from that parody? I think for Cabin in the Woods, that's a successful balancing act. I think for Malignant, it fails at that.
Wow, okay.
Mostly because the payoff is really, really not enjoyable. And the first 2/3 of the film that you have to slog through, it is boring camera, boring soundtrack, bad acting, bad writing. It's tough. The horror is scattered in between investigative segments. And if I had to nail down why it's not scary, which is kind of tough, I mean, that's a pretty subjective thing. If I have to nail down why I'm not edge of my seat or even appreciation of a scare or the horror elements of it, is that it's too investigative. It feels like a cop type drama, and maybe that again is the intentional result of trying to parody a movie like Scream, where it's like, this is a killer with a motive. He is, obviously just very brutal and maybe has supernatural elements to it. That blurs the line there. But the investigative elements, the inclusion of help for our characters, of support for our characters, it empowers our characters in a way that horror is not going to benefit from, and this film definitely doesn't benefit from.
So were there times, especially you said like the first 2 acts, basically before things go, as you say, kind of like batshit crazy in Act 3. With the first 2 acts, is it like, oh, okay, we're just watching a crime. We're just watching like a crime drama, and then it's like, oh wait, we're back to horror. Was it doing that? Was it cutting in and out? Like it felt like 2 different movies at times.
I don't know if it felt like 2 different movies. I think,
or it's just
more
when
so,
it was horror, it was not good.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more so the horror suffers because of this balancing act. These two sides of the coin. There's almost an abundance of over information in this movie, which I think. I mean, believe me, I'm no expert on screenwriting a horror script, but I think sacrificing information to the audience is the way to build suspense, to build unease. Again, there's because of the investigative element in this film and wanting to give the puzzle pieces to the audience. So maybe the sharp viewer can say, "Oh, I knew that," or can guess something that, which is fun in its own. I think it hurts everything the film is about.
Wow,
which is tough. Again, I have to mention here, it really is in the eyes of the beholder. If you are a James Wan fan, especially of the Conjuring universe, this is an interesting watch because you see him maybe even acting on some of the tropes of the genre, some of the tendencies of the horror genre, and riffing on them in a way, almost like a Sam Raimi or something like that. And man, it's really going to be a toss in the air if that's going to be something you have a lot of enjoyment of. I think if you pin yourself as that type of audience member and want a meta horror story, again, Cabin in the Woods is my recommendation. It's done it better. It's achieved it better, and I think it's a little bit more on the nose. It's more of a tight film. For my non-horror fans, best thing I can compare it to, think about the first John Wick. What does John Wick do as far as intentional camp, intentional cheesy lines, and how successfully it does that in still being a good film?
Right, because it knows how silly it's being in the moments it's being silly. When they're doing like highlights in the subtitles and things like that, and just the silliness, it knows it's being silly purposefully.
Exactly.
And it's like, hey, we get it, but we're all having fun here.
Exactly. That is camp, and this film has
done right,
that.
Yes.
Exactly. This film definitely has camp, 100%, but I don't think it lands the balancing act to, yield the crop on that or, really get that payoff for it.
Wow, okay.
But that's why there is a lot of disarray, a lot of polarization online, especially of where does this film fall? And hopefully I've been able to give some perspective to it, especially because if it is going to be something that you're invested into to check it out and see these twists and what may be talked about online in more spoilery ways, then that's going to be something you watch regardless. I land on the side, it was not worth it, and definitely not worth your time for that reason. I think for all the camp, for all the type of service it builds up to for a twist, I don't think the payoff is there. And not only that, more importantly, if we're talking about comparing the time you would invest to watch one movie versus another, I think you have multiple different type of movies that achieve the same type of goals that this film may be going for and do it better and succeed with it. This film just very simply does not succeed in what it's going for. So we are going to go ahead and give Malignant a 29.
Whoa! Way worse than I thought. Okay. Yeah. I thought, honestly, you talking about it, I was like, oh, he's coming in almost middle of the road, just like we did with Videodrome, where kind of you would be like, oh, didn't love it, didn't hate it, you're that middle of the road guy. But no, okay, so you were in the camp of not good.
Not good. Not worth your time. And again, let's say you say, oh, man, I want that type of meta story.
You really didn't enjoy it that much.
Yeah, I did not. Let's say you really, really want that type of story, or you want that type of campy dialogue. Again, I can't stress enough. Is this worth your time more than Cabin in the Woods? No.
Or others, I'm sure, yeah.
Is this worth your time more than like a John Wick or those are just two examples. I'm sure there's plenty
of... Yeah, but that was a very good job you did of just dissecting the film and what it's really trying to be two things, and there's better options out there or films that can do it better. Dancing on the edge of a knife and not doing it well.
Absolutely.
There's not a good balancing act.
Absolutely. And with how much conflicting information is out there as far as taste and is it worth your time? Again, I really hope I'm able to navigate that as a watching guide.
And they're really pushing as far as advertising, because I've been seeing it everywhere, and people look up a review or just like the Rotten Tomatoes of it, and if you have such polarizing things, it's nice to have a bit of a more understanding of what it is. Some people might look at a rating and be like, well, we have to watch this. People are saying this is one of the best movies of this genre, then we have to watch it. Other people are saying it's one of the worst.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's great.
I'm hope I did the balancing. We're talking about balancing acts. I hope I was able to do a balancing act and give no spoilerly criticism on something that really is it worth your time? And I my vote is no. Hopefully that gives you some insight better than the very polarizing view of this is the best thing ever or this is the worst thing ever, and you're gonna have to watch it regardless.
Right, yeah, for sure. Very cool. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Vin, or are we rolling credits here?
I think that's it. Again, excited to hear from our audiences, our producers. Give me some fuel. I'm excited more so in the collaboration of what that can be, and either getting excited or outraged over movies together. So I think that's just been standing out for me.
Awesome, Vin. Thank you so much, Vin, for bringing these movies today, and we'll catch you next week. And for folks, we'll run down the list just one more time here. We have The Duellists at 83%, Videodrome at 69%, Hook at 72%, Reminiscence at 57%, and Malignant at 29%. We thank you so much for stopping by this week, folks, and we will see you next week. Bye. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or tell a friend about us. If you're wondering if a film is worth a watch, or if you'd just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our website, become a producer and go to the Donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value you feel you received from us. You'll get a producer mention on the next podcast episode, too. We're looking to build this into something large and great, but also be independent from those corporate sponsors. So we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.